Welcome back, capital F football fans. Today we are going over our top 10 quarterbacks for the 2025 college football season. These are obviously very early rankings. There's a lot of off season left, but as always, be sure to like and subscribe. It helps us out a lot. And now let's jump into our honorable mentions for this top 10. These are going to be guys who could be on the fringe of top 10, a few younger guys who we think could easily break the top 10 if they take the next step. And those guys are going to be Dylan Raiola, DJ Lagway, and Josh Hoover. Josh Hoover, clearly the best of the three in this group, but he has a lot more experience than the other two. He was phenomenal at TCU last year and could be even better this year. But for Raiola and Lagway, two similar guys in similar situations last season. They were both true freshman starters who struggled a bit early on, but eventually regrouped and led their teams to bowl wins. And while their numbers weren't fantastic last season, they both showed clear signs that they could be elite Power 4 quarterbacks, especially with proper weapons at their disposal, which both programs have addressed so far this offseason. Great young talent all around. We're extremely excited to see what those guys can do. But at 10, we have Diego Pavia of Vanderbilt. He will need to improve at least moderately as a passer to hold this ranking in our opinion, but in year one as Vanderbilt's starter, he ran that offense to perfection, pulled off a couple huge upsets, and really cemented himself as a top starting quarterback in that conference. Last year, he had a near 60% completion percentage, over 3,000 yards of total offense, 26 total touchdowns, and just 4 interceptions. Very, very solid numbers there. Makes good decisions with the football, could stand to make an improvement in his accuracy, but overall, very good starter, and we have him at 10th. And at 9, we have the Tennessee quarterback, Nico Iamaleava. A somewhat underwhelming year one for Nico, but we think that can be chalked up to inexperience as a starter, and Dylan Sampson being one of the best backs in the country, taking up a lot of that volume in that offense. Still a lot to work out there confidence-wise, but talent-wise, he is still the elite 5-star we all know and love. Last year, he finished with nearly 3,000 total yards, 22 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. Like we said, not the greatest stats in the world, but if you take a look at his last 6 games in the regular season, he looked very good, going 5-1, completing over 65% of his passes for 1,300 yards and 12 touchdowns, with an efficiency rating of 155.8, while throwing just 2 picks over that time frame. Very promising numbers there. A full season of that would look something like 2,500 pass yards, 24 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions, which would be pretty good. But with a confidence boost, we think he could be even better than that, and that's why we have him at number 9. And at 8, we have LaNorris Sellers of South Carolina, who is coming off an amazing first season as South Carolina starter at just 19 years of age. He's already a great leader on that offense, not just in spirit, but with his play as well. He really has that it factor that we haven't seen a Gamecock quarterback have in quite a while. Last year, he completed over 65% of his passes with over 3,200 yards of total offense, 25 total touchdowns, and like most of the quarterbacks we've already talked about, could afford to improve his decision making and accuracy. But in his first year as their starter, he played about as good as you could have asked. But similar to him, at number 7, we have Sam Leavitt of Arizona State. Very similar to Sellers, in fact. In his first year as a starter, he becomes one of the best quarterbacks in his conference, leads his squad to the Big 12 title game, and actually ends up winning the thing. This year, he had a completion percentage of 61.7, over 3,300 total yards, 29 total touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. Very great year for him, and he's widely considered one of the best quarterbacks in the country heading into 2025. We actually have him a bit low comparatively, and that's because we don't think the loss of Cam Scatterbo will necessarily help him and that offense as a whole. We think Arizona State could absolutely be as good as they were last season, but in our opinion, losing his best teammate and probably the best player on that team overall will not do him many favors. But with that, next we have another quarterback we think may be a bit overrated, and that is Penn State's quarterback Drew Allar at 6. Again, very good quarterback, led his team to a Big Ten championship appearance, led his team to playoff wins over SMU and and Boise State, but really lacked that ability to ascend to that next level in the biggest moments. Other than that, this season he completed over 66% of his passes, had over 3,600 total yards of offense, 30 total touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. Great year, and he, like everyone else on this list, of course, has the ability to reach that next level. We just aren't as confident in that happening as we are some of the people listed above him, especially because, like Sam Leavitt, he loses his best weapon on offense in Tyler Warren. But Penn State does bring back both of their 1,000-yard backs, and they do bring in a couple more weapons for him in the portal. All good things to see if you are Drew Allar, but above him, it may come as a surprise. At 5, we have John Mateer of Oklahoma. Now, we know what you're thinking. Colton, he played a Mountain West schedule last year, and I know, but Brent Venables brings in Ben Arbuckle, formerly of Washington State, where John Mateer comes from, to ease the learning curve for Mateer. They bring in a plethora of weapons and protection for him both in the portal and through high school, and Brent Venables and the Sooners like to use their quarterback's legs. We know this, which Mateer has shown he can do at an elite level, and overall we think this is just a perfect fit all around. And if Arbuckle can coach Cam Ward up to be a first-round NFL talent, we think he can turn Mateer into a top 5 quarterback in the country next year. And after him, at 4, we have Cade Klubnik of Clemson. A little bit of an alliteration there. Now, Cade is a very interesting player. He clearly had an amazing season this year, completing over 63% of his passes, had over 4,100 total yards, 43 total touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. But he was very hot and cold at times this season, especially towards the end of the year. Didn't have great days versus either Louisville or Virginia Tech. Bounced back in a big way versus Pitt, shrunk a little bit in their big rivalry matchup versus South Carolina, turned it back up to 100 in the ACC title game, and then played well in their playoff game. Our biggest thing for Cade next year is just being able to be more consistent and dependable in those big moments. The stats are already there. He could easily have been a top 3 quarterback this year. He's very talented, very dynamic player, and if he can add a better, not even better, just a more consistent crunch time execution to his game, he could be easily one of the best players in the sport. And into our top 3, at 3, we have Garrett Nussmeier of LSU entering his senior season. He's already a very gifted passer. Our only qualm was that he threw too many picks last season, which is reasonable. It was his first year starting. He led the SEC in pass attempts. He threw the ball over 40 times a game on average, and with that comes a lot of growing pains, something that we think will set him up for a lot of success in 2025. He's got a ton of experience under his belt, and now Brian Kelly and Joe Sloan have brought in a ton of talent for him to work with. Bauer Sharp, Destin Hill, and Donovan Green are all guys who are transferring in and could contribute immediately, and they bring in wide receivers Berrien Brown and Nick Anderson from Kentucky and Oklahoma to serve as potential top targets for Nussmeier next year. All of this is pointing to what we think will be an amazing season next year for Nuss. We've got him at 3, but the controversy doesn't end there. In fact, it might just be starting, because at 2, we have Carson Beck of Miami, formerly of Georgia, and well, what do we have here? Beck was one of the best quarterbacks in the country in 2023, and for reasons that have been widely speculated and litigated, he had a season that was not so great in 2024. 64.7% completion percentage, just over 3,500 total yards, and 29 total touchdowns to go along with 12 interceptions. Those stats may not sound that bad, but compared to 2023, they really aren't great. But we think the move to Miami will be a game changer for him. Along with Beck, they bring in a lot of talent to surround him with. He's closer to home. He'll be playing in the ACC, who will just say hasn't been known for their abundance of elite defenses in recent years. And most importantly, he's been at the top before. We already know he's capable of being an elite quarterback, unlike virtually every other quarterback on this list. With one good year, a better outlook, a fresh start, a new team, he could absolutely be right back on top in our opinion, but we think there is one man standing in his way, and at number 1, we have Arch Manning of Texas. We're buying the hype, folks. Say what you want. We think this kid is an absolute phenom. He appeared in 10 games but passed in only 6 of those, with a completion percentage of 67.8, over 1,000 total yards, 12 total touchdowns, and just 2 interceptions. Obviously a very small sample size, but hypothetically in a full 12 game season, we'll be conservative and say around 25 attempts per game rather than the 15 he averaged in the games he played in this year. Those stats would look something like 204 completions on 300 attempts, 3,100 passing yards, about 30 passing touchdowns with around 6 interceptions, and his rushing stats, adjusted to the number of touches he'd be getting as a starter, would look something like 288 yards on 60 attempts with 12 rushing touchdowns, which when all added up equates to 3,400 total yards, 42 total touchdowns, and just 6 interceptions. And I would say, yes, in his first year as a starter, be looking for his numbers to look something like this or possibly even better. He's got a lot of talent to work with at Texas. Steve Sarkisian has that program bursting at the seams with talent, and I'd be surprised if they have any issue getting back to the SEC championship with Arch Manning, who might just be our Heisman pick this year. And with that, thank you for watching. As always, if you enjoyed, be sure to like and subscribe, share with your friends if you're feeling generous. It helps us out a lot, and we will see you in the next one.